Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, is an insightful podcast dedicated to the strategic minds leading today's higher ed institutions. Each episode brings a unique perspective from visionary and tech-forward college presidents, chancellors, and other high-level academic leaders, diving into the complexities and nuances of running a modern educational institution. This show is hosted by Dr. Brian Gross, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Athletics at Hartwick College, and is a valuable resource for current and aspiring leaders in academia, offering a playbook of visionary ideas and practical solutions for the ever-evolving landscape of higher ed. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Visionary Voices wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis Kadiu, joined by my insightful co-host, Dr. JC Bonilla. Hey, JC, how's it going?
Not so good. Last time we did this, I read the intro. Seems that I just got fired because you didn't even ask me if I wanted to do it. So maybe the ratings came in and everybody, Ardis has the voice to intro.
We haven't even published that episode yet, so.
See, it's my insecurities, man, talking.
I know. You didn't even know. But we will swap back and forth in the next few episodes. How about that?
We're doing an evening podcast, everybody. So most of the times we record during the day. So today we are joined by the stars.
We're switching it up.
Well, I'm great because then I'm holding a whiskey. Is that all right? So everybody, you're all right if I do this one with the whiskey?
Absolutely. Love it.
Ardis is not even drinking chamomile tea or anything like that. So it's just a boring fellow.
I'm just drinking water. I'm getting old. I got heartburn from dinner, so.
But the good thing is that Ardis is carrying today. So I get to drink and ask questions while he's literally taking us on a journey. So Ardis, while I drink, what do we got on plan today, my friend?
I've been drinking quite a bit over the past couple of days, as we've been watching a lot of basketball for sure.
You're going to detox while talking Gen AI stuff.
That's right. Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about AI assistants. We are going to dive a little bit deeper on what that means. These AI assistants or AI agents, you probably are seeing it quite a bit on the market and the marketing and how companies are positioning their AI products around this idea that AI is taking a personification. In the case, for example, of Microsoft Copilot. But recently, there has been a lot of buzz around a company called Cognition, and they released Devon, which they named their AI Devon, and Devon is an AI software engineer. And, there's been a lot of buzz around it, and I wanted to start the story with Devon and kind of the potential there, because software engineering is one of those things where it's not just about coding, it's about problem solving. It's about going through a whole set of requirements and problem solving and thinking about the problem. How do you do the research? How do you do testing? All of these different things that are wired together in software engineering. And how do you bring those things together? And AI can kind of, put those strings of tasks together and that reasoning about it to embody a whole person or to replicate the tasks and the things that a software engineer needs to do. So that's really, really interesting. And we're going to start talking a little bit more about that topic for sure.
Ardis, can we do 3 grounding components of software engineering? Just can you give everybody a 15-second on what is software engineering? We talk about analysts, we talk about ML, but this may be a slight of a curveball. You have probably like 20, 30 software engineers under your belt. What does the software engineering do, and why would I care to automate it through a generative AI?
Yeah, so software engineering really revolves around you have a problem that you're trying to solve, and it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Most of the time, you think about software engineering as just coding something, but it's not only that, right? It's actually solving problems. You come in with a problem, and then you have to do the research or how you're going to solve that problem in code. What are the algorithms that you're going to use? how you organize the code, what's the flow. You need to think about testing. You need to think about infrastructure, what types of storage you're going to use. So it all depends on the problem, right? So software engineering revolves around a lot of different disciplines, and it ties together those different tasks like testing, coding, architecture, all of those pieces together.
I come home and I have a hole on the wall. So if I could do a fix, so you know what a fix is? You tear down the wall. That's a fix. What a software engineer does in a really crude way is that looks at the hole and puts a patch, knowing that it's the right patch with the right materials, and it basically fixes the problem. But knowing that just because you can do code, you may end up with the wrong solution. And a lot of the coding out there, it's dirty, messy, doesn't solve the problems of tomorrow, just kind of puts a patch on it. And those are the interesting differentials of just basically coding for the sake of coding versus architecting software engineering code. And this is what probably this Copilot, Devon, it's all about. The second grounding, right? Why would a company do a Copilot versus an LLM? Or is it a Copilot, it's all on the foundations of an LLM? Or like, what can we say about where those Copilots sit on all the things that we've been talking about?
Yeah. So what we've talked about in the past in this podcast, we've talked a lot about specific tasks that AI can accomplish. And we talked about chatbots a lot. We talked about ChatGPT, Claude, all of these chatbots. So that's an interface of how you're communicating back and forth with this generative AI large language models. However, we've also extended that a little bit more to think about how do we store things and how do we use retrieval. So it's not a matter of, just asking questions of the LLMs, but how do you ground it in source of truth? Now we take that a step further and we give goals to our software, to this AI, and it needs to have different components to it. It needs to be able to reason about the tasks or the goals that you're giving it, break it down into multiple, kind of strategies and different sets of strategies on how to solve that, different tasks or even subtasks, be able to go through all those subtasks and accomplish them one by one and then put them back together. And in a lot of cases, test the results of those subtasks. And if things work out okay, then great. If they don't, then it needs to kind of go through this loop over and over again. So that's when we're thinking about AI agents or AI assistants is not just accomplishing, hey, rewrite this email for me like a chatbot, but it's actually saying, plan my day, right? That's the big difference that we're talking here. So not rewriting your email, but plan my day. And those are two very different things. And we're calling the second part as an assistant. Think about this as your personal assistant coming in and taking care of all these different things, making a lot of decisions in that path.
So what I'm hearing, right, is as we unpack Devon and these assistants, there's an autonomous feature that will invoke all the instrumentation, infrastructure, terminology, and fundamentals we've been chatting about, whether it's an agent or context windows or ML, LLMs and whatnot. But it would function that way, orchestrate, but it feels that the assistant, it's grounded, coded, permitted, if you will, to go out and think in itself. Is that right? Am I getting this the right thing? Oh, fascinating. So, all right, I want to do the episode. Tell me more about Devon.
Yeah, so the company that built it is called Cognition. And it's the first, what they call software engineer. And you can give it an idea. I would like to think about building a mobile application that can build a bracket for me, right?
As in sports brackets?
A sports bracket, yeah. So you can actually go down that route and you can ask
Don't get me started, Ardis. Do not get me started. We're recording in the cusp of March Madness and my bracket ain't looking good. So Devon, where you been all my life, huh?
I thought you're pretty good at brackets. Aren't you a basketball fan?
My friend, not only am I a basketball fan, I play basketball, I'm a data person, but there's a Spanish saying that the blacksmith has a wooden knife at home. You know what that means? When it comes to doing brackets, you know how much science and math I use? None whatsoever. So, hence my brackets really suck, right? So, but anyway, that's a diversion.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's a US saying, but it's like the carpenter's kids have no shoes.
There you go. Different profession, but same meaning, right?
Yeah. It all has to do with some kind of smithing, right? So going back to Devon and this AI assistant. So Devon is actually, it's taking on the whole job description, right, of a software engineer. And that's exactly how you think about what it's doing. It's taking a problem, you can write a problem for it, or you can give it an idea, and then it will do a lot of different things. And the interface that they have is very, very nice. Is they have kind of, coding, you can see everything that's going on. It will go through an iteration of building those ideas, expanding that idea, doing research on the different components of your idea, and then start creating code. So it will search, for example, it will search Reddit, or it will bring other memories from wherever in the web around that problem. It will pull together a plan, and then it will start coding towards that plan, and then it will do the testing as well. Obviously, it's not perfect. It's just the first iteration. So you can do certain things really well, but this is take a lot of people by surprise because it's one of the first one to be available where you can test it and you can see how you can go from an idea to a finished product with a lot of different things in between, right? And this idea of AI agents or AI assistants kind of build up on what we've talked about before. So you have if we go back to the technical component, you have your large language models that are really, really good. You have memory, knowledge bases, right? So they're doing their RAG. You have skills and tools and the orchestration of all of these things. Then you call them agents, right? So an agent is essentially a packaging of an application that has all these different layers, right?
Against a narrow use case.
Against a narrow use case. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So can I fast forward and say with an assistant is just programmed to do multiple dozens or maybe hundreds of these use cases via agents? Is that too simplistic?
Yeah, no, I think you got it. Sometimes the words are used interchangeably, a tool or an agent. So you can use those interchangeably, right? But it's these three things that it has. It has the ability to use a large language model, AI, to reason, a brain. It can have memory to store things and retrieve things. And
Ardis, are you saying that because, software engineering is such an interesting skill, they're international, right? We know that a lot of the incredible software engineers reside abroad. You're saying that these new assistants, we can train them to speak English?
Yeah. Well, I don't know where we're going with this, but
that was a bad joke. That's a bad joke. It's just that there's amazing software engineers who do not speak very good English. That's all I'm saying. I was just thinking of, oh my gosh, and I can communicate with them.
So let's put it this way. The comments are all written in English. Very, very good English.
That's a really interesting value prop. Get state of the art of modern architecture. Think about the following, Ardis. I'm super excited right now. One of the problems with software engineers is that they're as good as the technology that they've worked on, right? So all of a sudden they are contemporary and modern, right? They always keeping up because, they're trained based on every new standard, these machines, right? It's code. But then the aspect of communication, it's a really tough one. I mean, you and I have worked with incredible software engineers, and sometimes that's not their forte, right? Documenting, translating business requirements and whatnot. It's a really interesting problem to solve. Who is behind this, by the way? It's an interesting idea. Do you know who's behind this? Who's funding this? Usually there's famous people behind it. Any idea of who's behind this, Devon?
Yeah. So this company is backed by Peter Thiel.
Of course. And Peter Thiel, for everyone who doesn't know the name, right? Well, Napster, Facebook, right?
Yes.
Or Justin Timberlake, if you saw the movie, right? Played by Justin Timberlake on the network movie.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So we're actually doing something very similar at Element, JC. So the reason why this is interesting to us, or to me at least, is because we're doing something very, very similar. So how we translate this into the higher education space, or at least what we're doing at Element, is that we had our first AI chatbots for students, 1 year ago. So in March of last year, we launched our BoltBot, and it was an AI chatbot. So it had memory, and it was actually doing question and answer. So it had one skill. Now, over the past year, we have developed it to have a lot of different skills. For example, skills like starting an application, completing an application, registering for an event, doing things like signing up for appointments for you, right? So you can communicate with it and it'll do these things for you in the background. So we kind of have got to the point where we started to think about, well, how do we now personalize these so we can make different personas for different use cases? Because having a bot in an admissions page is very different from having a bot in a internal, let's say, athletics page or financial aid page, right? So they need different knowledge bases. They need different knowledge. They also need different skills because they need to be able to access different things. So it's like we started that process. We're like, okay, how do we build this? And we thought about personas. Like these bots have different personas. And we started to approach it from, I don't know if you heard of Character AI, but Character AI is a site where you can chat with someone, but it changes the tone and the voice and how you converse with it, right?
This is where I can find Elon Musk as a character,
Yes.
or Einstein, right? And I can really not only get the tone, but I could really have a meaningful conversation session, right, with any of these characters, right? And it could be a representative of a historical figure, Elon Musk, Einstein, or it could be an imaginary friend, right? So Pukadulu can be a dog and Pukadulu is talking to me, type of thing, right?
Exactly. And so that's a way we first approached it. We're like, okay, you know what? You need to talk to different personalities or different people from campus. But then we dive a little further and we're like, well, I don't think that's going to work very well because it's very superficial, right? We changed the prompt or the personality, but still we need to orchestrate a lot of things in the background. Like we need to change what tools they're accessing, or what tools they have. We need to change the personality. We need to change what type of knowledge they have access to and what kind of skills they have access to. So then we went down the road of, we're like, okay, we can do personalities, but the other part that we had was not just a student-facing AI bot with personas, but we also had a copilot, what we called Bold Copilot. So this was for administrators to actually interact with Element in a conversational interface. So they can say, catch me up, and you'll catch them up on the day and say, hey, you have this many tasks to do. It will just rewrite their messages for them. You'll build a whole email campaign. But they were invoked as different tools, right? And there wasn't really a clear connection. So we're thinking about this problem. We're like, okay, it makes a lot of sense to think about this as essentially team members. Like you have AI assistants or AI team members that are very good at specific tasks. And they're essentially embody what the person would be doing on the school side. So you have someone who is an AI assistant, for example, like we have an academic advisor, right? Or you have an admissions advisor, or you can have a career coach, or you can have a student peer, right? So all of these different personas, they're not just personas, but they need to be able to access different tools and they need to have different skills. So when we started thinking about this, we're like, okay, we don't have to have AI, assistant or AI chatbot for a student and then for staff. So we're kind of having these two sides of it. We're like, it's all the same thing. It's all AI assistants. It doesn't matter. It's just a person who is being helpful. And it's much easier for us to reason about it, right? Because now we can take, the tasks or the capabilities that a person with that title will have. And we can say, okay, this bot can do very similar things. And we can connect it very easily, right?
Interesting. Let me see if I can thread this conversation or repackage it for all of us friends who are learning about this incredible new thing and how actually it's deployed in higher education, Elements approach. So what we learned is that an assistant, in terms of AI, it's a highly trained series of agents, tools, or functions, right, that leverage the entire AI stack, right, from RAG, context window, and LLMs, all that kind of things. But unlike a chatbot, and that was one of your first point, right, that it's more narrow. So kind of, hey, what's the event? So you have that conversation, right? It's conversational. It goes beyond that. And you first think that there's a layer of personalization that one can have a lot of fun. Let's start thinking about assistants with a medieval twist or dark, personalities in history or upbeat personalities or imaginary, whatever, right? But more importantly, as you start unpacking this, what you realize is that I'm going to use this analogous the person, the human, the technology in this case, is so capable that there's upskilling, and you keep on upskilling these assistants so they can actually function as a team. And the other part that I hear is that it's bidirectional, because on the transaction of higher education, there's the student angle, right? And also the administrator angle, or the person within higher education, the person approaching higher education. So you start thinking about, hey, give me a coach, or my assistant right now is skilled to doing coaching, and the assistant is talking to the student. But the assistant person, right? The assistant can also start learning abilities and capabilities that the higher education professional inside, the walls of higher education will need. And this is where other things will come and start doing, right? And that's what we're saying, copywriter and manager, and multiple things like that.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
So we go from one AI chatbot that's able to do a bunch of things to now saying, okay, we want to have the same chatbot with the same interface, but we want it to have different skills and different personalities. And we want that to times 10, times 20 for every type of job that we need to do. And now we have a team, right? So we have a digital team. You start thinking, it's like, okay, I need use cases for AI to use AI. And that's what we hear quite a bit. It's like, okay, I need use cases. I need to build a campaign. I need to translate something, or I need to build images, or I need some strategy or some data work.
Can you expand that use case? Because when you say I need this, it sounds very, I, the user, right? Whether I'm the student or administrator, I'm asking this technology to do this for me. But at the outset, we said that what makes an assistant very unique is that autonomous aspect that they can go and do the task plus. So can you do this analysis for me, right? So that's a prompt. It comes back with analysis. That's still on bot land, right? So for it to be assistant, it would probably go and, reconfigure the emails, knowing that in the analysis, now there's an opportunity to basically message the people who are highly engaged or poorly engaged. Is that right? How do I start thinking about, I ask them, but then they put on the hat of assistant and then gives me that plus? How do I see that? Is it notifications? Is it a report? Is it just basically conversational activated?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the way we've implemented it is we have a number of different assistants, a half a dozen plus different AI assistants. And, for example, for the student side, we have an academic advisor, we have a career coach, we have a financial aid advisor.
That's amazing.
We have an admissions advisor, a peer. And from the administrative side, for example, we have a design assistant, we have an AI copywriter, and we have a campaign strategist, an event manager, a marketing advisor, and even a data analyst. So all of these different AI assistants, when you talk about a task, I would like to do this, you can start with one. And then as you have a conversation with it, if you can say, hey, what's the strategy for, recruiting more students in the fall? And the strategist assistant, you click on it, it will come up and it can give you that. And now you can have a follow-up conversation and say, oh, can you build me a campaign with this strategy to reach out to these students? And you'll say, great, but I'm a strategist, so I'm going to hand you off now, to our campaign builder assistant, right? And you can see the switch right within the interface. It will say handing it off to the campaign builder assistant. And now that set of tools or that set of capabilities has the context of the conversation. And think about it this way. It's like you're in an agency. This is exactly like an agency approach. It's like you see the conversation, you hand it off to somebody else and say, hey, here's a strategy that I provided. Now I need you to execute on this thing. And then that campaign builder assistant can hand off different pieces to the copywriter. And the copywriter can come back and say, oh, I wrote this email. And he can come back and say, well, maybe I have a graphic designer assistant and he can generate images for you. So that's what we're building, right? A team that works together to accomplish, and it will do the handoff seamlessly because it understands what they're good at, what certain ones are good at.
I like very much what you're saying of this is a team. I'd like to come back to that, if you please.
Yes.
How is this a team? But what you just describe, whether it's a team or not, it sounded sequential. So I just wanted to make sure that this is sequential, where the output of a prompt becomes the input of the next one. So the strategy becomes copyright, the copyright becomes the graphic, and the graphic becomes the asset that goes into the email, and the email then goes into basically send, and then here's the deposit, right? So sequence. can it work in multi-threads? So if one input becomes multiple outputs, and also like
Yes.
I'm seeing multiple workflows, and
Yes.
if that it can do that, great. Put me at peace. How do I know what does it do? And I guess in Element, how do I trust it? Because you know what I mean is the aspect of Ardis, you're blowing my mind. I didn't even know you built this in Element. Congrats. And selfish plug for Element. Everybody wanted to succeed, but that's very impressive, my friend. So talk to me about trust. Is doing 5 things and I only ask it to do once, and all of a sudden like emails are being sent. Is it all about queuing? Is it all like kind of force prompting? How you make the director of admissions or the higher education professional comfortable that this is a teammate as opposed to a solo writer, right?
Yeah, we call it there's always a human in the loop, right? So for every step or every significant action that needs to happen, there has to be some verification from a human. And that's what we say, hey, here is the output of this particular thing. Do you want us to continue, or do you have any feedback for the AI assistant to modify what was built?
Check and balances, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. So when you think about, hey, I need to build a campaign, there is the campaign strategy assistant that's putting together the outline. It's putting together the topics that make sense together. It's putting together the call to actions, all of that. And then when you're writing it, it's parallelizing. If there's 5 emails, you're invoking 5 different writing assistants that are in parallel going in, because they're taking just that context of that email and saying, oh, I'm going to write this email. I'm going to write about this email. And they're going in and pulling the content from the knowledge base. They're doing their writing in the tone of the school and then returning that back. So when you see it, you see kind of a skeleton of the 5 emails that were projected that it's going to be written on the plan. And then you see those being populated one by one really, really fast because they're all running in parallel, right? So that's how we're working on it. That's how we're thinking about it. So certain tasks can be parallelized, certain others can't. But as you look at it, then you're like, okay, great. This looks really good. Let's go ahead and build it. And then there's another assistant that goes in and installs that in Element, right? So it actually builds the HTML and builds the workflow that can be deployed.
Here's a campaign or whatever. Yeah, that's amazing. So back to Teammate. I'd like to just spend 20 seconds putting this all together because it's fascinating, right? We started the conversation talking about there's this really breakthrough of a software engineer and assistant that is trained to do multiple functions and brings a profession, right, to the next level, and is powered all by AI. So there's an analogous path on Element that you're doing this for higher education. It is cooked up with an Element, obviously. And you're starting to think about orchestrating personalities, I guess tones, looking at the role of the student, how can these assistants support, or the administrator, right? And it supports sequential flows. So the output becomes the input, right? And also multi-thread, but it's all with a human. What's the expression? Human inside? A human
in the loop.
Human in the loop. Beautiful. Did AI give you that tagline, by the way?
No.
Anyway, how is this a teammate? Because here's where my head went. JC is the conductor of this AI symphony, right?
Yeah.
A teammate requires me to basically have my AI assistant and it's pushing work to Ardis, because at the end of the day, it's Ardis and JC, the team. So we just basically recruiting all this technology to make this happen. So how does that feel, a team, or just self-empowerment, which also could be just that's my team? How do you see it? Is it that a team in the construct that multiple people and you can pass tasks and whatnot? Or is it that now this is my team and it augments my productivity? How do you see that?
Well, that's an interesting question because, the mental model is really important here, right?
I guess that's a question. What's the mental model, right?
Yeah. That's a really good question. The way that we would like for it to be seen is it's an augmentation. So it's augmenting what you're doing, right?
It's my team.
It's your team.
Perfect, right? And this is the AI angle. We're talking about productivity, right? So this is my team and I show up with my team. Is there a version where it's kind of like a staging environment and my team pushes to your team and my people talk to your people type of thing, Ardis? Do you see that happening also in AI or Element, if anything?
I don't know. What do you mean by my team talks to your team?
I'm really triggered by, I work with strategists, right, today and also in higher education, and they're amazing humans. I don't understand what they do, but I cannot do what I do without the input of strategy, right? So they have to push that body of work so that I can actually assign performance and KPIs to the strategy. So think about right now, very media, strategy devices, the segmentation, brand, and all those kind of qualitative data, but it needs to layer quant. So without strategy, in a way, you become what you measure. So what I'm trying to measure is something that is dictated by strategy. So they're definitely my input, but then my output goes back and it's iterative, right? So there's this kind of flow. So in this case, this is where my team, right, talks to their team, right, and then it becomes better. So there's that part of the orchestration.
Yeah.
It's truly cross-functional. What happens when the team is cross-functional? Do you see the AR layers jump in lanes, or at this moment, the technology stays within a team, knowing that it would not be cross-functional? Is that better as a framing?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying is that the artifact that it produces can be something that can be handed off to someone else, right, to pick up or to do something else. So it doesn't have to be a finished product, right? And that's what we're talking about, is that you can use the copywriter and say, write this email for me, and then you can copy and paste that email into an editor, or you can copy and paste it into your email builder and email campaign builder, and then just use that on your own. If you're building emails, you can just use the copywriter assistant, or you can use the art director assistant to create images. So you can use individual ones and take the artifacts that they produce. But what we see as a vision is that you're now able to be more of an orchestrator, and you can kind of orchestrate them together. You can string them together and they can reason together a lot better. We're not quite there yet. I don't think LLMs are at the stage where they can be really good about breaking this massive strategy tasks into smaller and smaller tasks that can be done. And that's where the gap is right now with GPT-4, which is one of the foundational models. We believe that over the summer, as GPT-5 gets introduced, it will have much, much more advanced reasoning capabilities. So we can give it this very complex, strategy task and say, help me think through this. And how would you break this problem down? And then go into subtasks and then do those subtasks. So that's the part where we're seeing, in some cases it does it really well, but it's not going to do the whole orchestration from strategy all the way down to a finished product in one prompt, for example, like as a goal.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because to your construct of a mental model, what a team is, right? The aspect of productivity, right? So I come and I show up highly productive in my AI team. It's just basically scaling all these artifacts. When what I'm doing is very systematic, like data analysis, right? There's a discrete answer 5 or not 5 versus a qualitative output that is strategy that is basically heuristics, opinions, intuition, highly informed by research. This is where the team in strategy probably does the research, presents summaries, and then a human team takes over. Whereas the opportunities in assistance on software engineering, as we've seen by Devon, or many other tasks, can start basically doing soup to nuts. So at the end of the day, I think it goes back to one of your earlier points that it's about understanding the flow of the personality, the use cases, and kind of the team that you want to build against you. So that was very, very clear. So fascinating, Ardis.
Yeah. And I mean, we believe that this is going to be the future of how we build software, how we build capabilities in software with all this assistance. We're not quite there yet, getting to that Tony Stark, Jarvis vision, right? So Jarvis is the quintessential AI assistant. So it's able to use tools, it's able to reason very clearly. Given a task, it will kind of, reason through and give you the best outputs and use all those tools. So that's the quintessential vision of these AI assistants. I think over the next few years, we're going to get better and better models that can actually be much more powerful in that reasoning capabilities. And then we add all the different tooling around it. But today, we can mimic and we can help quite a bit as having this AI assistants amplify the work that you're doing. So now you have the capability to do the job of 5 people that you needed, let's say, a year ago. now you can do that job of 5 people today by yourself because you have the help of all of these different assistants that are really, really good at creating specific artifacts and kind of tying those together for you.
Can I finish with a story that I think it's so on the money for what you're describing? Circa probably like 2010, at the cusp of our success at the School of Engineering at NYU, we literally couldn't keep up with applications. It was just too many. And there were 2 departments, financial engineering and technology management. They were just basically impossible, right? Impossible to keep up. Too many, too much interest. And whomever gets with that I-20, a lot of international students, and that admission letter first, had the upper hand. So how do you process thousands of applications and be in the first one? You know what we did? We decided that the A students, basically the 4.0s, perfect GRE, all that kind of stuff, they didn't have to leave the Office of Admissions because it's a no-brainer to admit, right? Do you know what also we decided? You know, your GPA is whatever that was, like 2.8, and your GRE is below 800. So it was a no-brainer to reject. So the dichotomy of this is straightforward and this is straightforward, just basically, it was done by not a faculty member. And I'm not even going to disclose how it got done, but it was basically automated, Ardis, leaving the faculty member, the human in the loop, with the bulk of, I need to translate these. I need to basically make the connections. And it was very, very interesting. So in other words, the play here is that an AI assistant gives you 10, 20% of the time so you can focus on the hardest decisions. And if you trust that the decision in making the tasks are repetitive, you really have a winning combination. Your team, in this case, wins, right? When the task it's systematized and is repetitive. So I wish you had done that in 2010.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the application review assistant or the missions assistant, like those are ones that we're adding in there, but they're more student facing. So, an application reader, we don't have that yet.
Here's my plug for you. In decisioning mode, what you want to do is an application reader that actually gives me, give me an A student, basically an easy to admit or something that is hard to admit because it's a mindset, you know what I mean? So in a way it ranks and it says this should be a 5-minute review versus a 50-minute review. You know what I mean? So anyway.
Yeah. So you always have that human reader, but now you're producing you're reading the essay and you're saying, okay, grade it against this rubric, or you're synthesizing all of the data that the student has entered in, like all the grades, all that stuff. So this summarization, synthesization, like all that stuff is things that AI can do very, very easily. But we're focusing more on the marketing use cases, JC. We're focusing more on the student engagement use cases rather than the grading part. And that's where this become really interesting because, marketing strategy is one thing, but then marketing artifacts are a lot of different things, like writing emails, generating images, writing communication, SMS messages, all of those pieces and the orchestration on the workflows, building those workflows. It's something that you can do it, but AI can do it literally in like 2 minutes, but you can spend 2 weeks, as a team of 4 or 5, like a copywriter and an email designer, an HTML builder.
And it doesn't take vacation, doesn't give you an attitude, and nor does it have to go to the bathroom and pee. Pretty good.
Exactly. Hey, remember when you said faculty members? Well, one of the things that faculty members hate is
teaching,
doing advising.
Well, sorry.
Well, the advising part, the teaching part can be, somewhat rewarding, but the advising part is like, because you have to know all the catalog and you have to figure out, it's like, okay, I have to put this course together and I have to look at the students' like path, how many courses they've taken, and then recommend things. It's like being a recommender in academia. I'm like, I don't know what you're interested in or what you're going to be good at.
Your typical, every semester I get at least 3 students who like what I do. And it's like, what class should I take next semester?
Right, exactly.
And my answer is always, I have no idea. I don't even know.
Yeah. What's available.
I don't even know what's available, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if you're the professional in the school who's actually that job. What a great opportunity for an assistant to basically have that recommender thing that is not discrete. Because what it happens is, here's my recommendation, and 10 minutes later, you have 1 or 2 recommendations. As a student, don't you want to do 1,000 and change it up just because, new information comes to you. Like, that's incredible. I love that use case.
You don't even have to ask the grumpy advisor, or like you can ask the AI advisor at 12 o'clock at night, just like we're doing this episode now, and say, hey, these are my courses I'm thinking about. Here's what I'm thinking next. Can you make some recommendations for me? And he has the knowledge of the whole catalog, and it knows what prerequisites, co-requisites are. So it can give you recommendations based on the things that you're asking as a student. And it can do it at 12 o'clock at night when you're thinking about meeting the deadline for registering for classes, right? It's like, imagine that.
It also knows that the course ahead, it's highly quantitative, and it looks at your performance. And I don't know, differential equations, like, you're going to suck in this course, or are you okay getting a C?
Exactly. Based on the description. Yep.
Right. Can you recommend a course where I can get an A because I need to keep my scholarship? Literally, I've gotten that request. And not only I have to give a recommendation, I have to fit it on the construct of how good are you and what is the course it's like so many different things, right?
That's version 2. That's version 2.0. So to wrap this whole up, I think we can go on and talk about AI assistants and all the use cases, all the things that we can automate. But when you think about AI assistants, think about AI chatbots, but they have the capability to reason. So they have a reasoning engine, usually a very large frontier model like GPT-4. It breaks things down in tasks and plans and does all of that stuff. It has memory, so it can store things and it can pull things again in context, a large context or knowledge bases. And then it has a lot of tools and kind of sub-agents that it can use. It has these whole tools and techniques they can use. So all of these tools, specialized tools, it can have access. And then based on that, it also has a personality. So you take a personality, you take tools, you take a knowledge base, and you take a very, frontier reasoning engine, and you would have an AI assistant that you are talking to that's built for a specific task. Of course, there's a lot of orchestration that happens in there, but that's what we're talking about, these AI assistants. And that's very vertical for a specific use case. You put a whole bunch of these together and you have an AI family or AI assistance platform that's handing a lot of these things off. And these are going to get better and better, and you're going to see in a lot of different use cases. So when somebody says, I'm going to give you a piece of software now, the software is actually the implementation of the thing that you want to get done, right? That's how they're going to wrap up software. It's going to be wrapped up with the tools being the software that's being written in the background, the algorithms and all the things. And the AI assistant has access to all these tools that's kind of doing the orchestration for you. And you can interact with it in a natural way just by having a natural conversation, just like a bot. But now it's much more sophisticated with all these tools in mind, right? So that's what we're going to see over the next year or two. These get a lot better. OpenAI probably is going to build some of these agent-like capabilities, in some of their models, but look out for them in your software that you're using today. Devon is just one example of it. And Element, our Bolt AI assistants, those are another example that we're going to announce over the next couple of weeks at ASU GSV. We're going to have them available, and we're going to keep building on them as kind of we go on. But hopefully this was useful on how you think about team augmentation and team empowerment. So in higher ed, we have a lot of capabilities that are not there right now, and team members that we need to hire but are not there, and we're seeing it everywhere. So hopefully this will make it a lot easier to support students 24/7 and also support staff members by getting their tasks done a lot faster and helping them essentially do the work of 5.
Ardis, fascinating. Thanks for bringing this up. Staff augmentation, here it is. But do not worry, Element engineer Devon will not be brought to the team today. Thank you, Ardis. Have a good night.
Click on that follow button and give us a review, please. And until next time.
Bye-bye.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea, They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.